Welcome to No More Carbon Copies. It's the podcast for high-performing leaders with big goals who feel stuck trying to reach the next level. At Vivero Leadership, we believe no two leaders are the same. The best leaders perform at their highest when they understand what makes them unique and stop trying to lead like someone else. This is where we explore how to see ourselves clearly, address self-sabotage, and lead with clarity, confidence, and purpose. You don't need to be a copy, you just need to be you. Welcome to No More Carbon Copies. You've reached the point where talent and hard work aren't enough to get you to the next level. You read the books and hit the KPIs, yet there's a nagging sense that you're plateauing. The truth? The biggest obstacle in your career right now is likely the one thing you can't see: yourself. Before we dive into today's episode, we want to invite you to the Leadership Accelerator. This is an exclusive in-person cohort in Middle Tennessee designed specifically for leaders who are tired of guessing why they're stuck. Using the Vivero Leadership Foundation framework and a radical 360-degree feedback process, we help you uncover the self-sabotage patterns that your standard annual reviews are too polite or too generic to mention. If you're ready to stop leading in the dark, visit viveroleadership.com right now to learn more and submit your application.
All right. Welcome to the No More Carbon Copies podcast. Grateful to have a good friend, Trey Dunavant, and we are going to have a very interesting conversation about the topic of self-awareness, which we both think is pretty important for us as leaders. We're going to talk about why we need it, why we don't have it. We're going to talk about how we might get self-awareness, and then ultimately, what's the value in terms of how we lead, how we navigate our careers and for life in general. So first of all, Trey, I know you're a frequent podcast guest with other folks, so thanks for coming to the No More Carbon Copies podcast. Give us a little background about how you've where you are now and how you got there.
Sure. Yeah, currently I'm with Belay Solutions, so I serve as our director of sales. And our world is virtual staffing. So I lead a sales team and we help leaders all over, mainly the nation. We have some global clients, but mainly serve the United States here with just helping them with either executive assistance, marketing assistance, and or back office support. So my journey here has been great. It's led me down different paths, but I think the through line in my life has always been people first and sales close behind in some form or fashion or another. So I've always served somewhere in the sales process. Typically right now happens to include leading a team to help leaders connect with their future EA.
Personally, wife, kids.
Yeah. Yep. So have the huge benefit, luxury, blessing of being close to Roger geographically. Living in Franklin, Tennessee, have a wife. We are going on, oh gosh, I should remember this on the spot. 18 years of marriage, 2 daughters, 10-year-old and 13-year-old. So yeah, loving the season we're in right now. Talk about self-awareness. If you want some self-awareness, have some children. They were a great start in learning self-awareness for sure.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, both those things, marriage, huge, self-awareness, parenting, doubling down on that challenge. So yeah, so let's jump in. I know we'll talk about kind of our histories and stories as we go through this conversation, but let's talk about self-awareness as though it's a pretty common topic, but I would say most of us struggle to get self-awareness. At some point we realize it. Let's talk about why people may struggle to have self-awareness. Why do you think that we lose self-awareness or we don't have self-awareness? And that's pretty common. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question to look at because like self-awareness, just by the name, is like it can be an inward thing, I think, right? It's like I'm on a journey to be more self-aware, so I need to know myself better. And that I think is a huge part of it. But as we just said about marriage or children or leadership, teams, working with others, it also helps with self-awareness. And so I think there's a lot of work we can do for ourselves in gaining it, right? Learning about ourselves. But I think there's a huge piece missing if you don't also have people close to you that can help speak into that too. And I feel like that's been my journey of either not having it early on or, I would say I had it for what it was, but it was pretty shallow, right? Because it's like again, I knew myself as I knew myself. And as I grew, I think another thing that I felt like started becoming more evident is it's not linear. It doesn't like track perfectly with age or season or something like that. Like different seasons of my life, I went from feeling like I knew a lot about myself to realizing I had a whole chapter that I'd never read somewhere inside that just hadn't been exposed yet. And so it's not always linear. So I think experiences, life experiences really pull that out and shine lights
Yeah.
on areas of that. At least it has for me.
Yeah. Totally agree. I kind of experience it like there's layers of an onion. It's not like it's still the onion, but they're like I'm pulling it back. So I keep on learning about
Yeah,
myself at a deeper level. And you get to a layer and you're like, wow, this is a total feels like a total new thing. It's just getting deeper into that same idea of who we are. For me, I I got into seasons where I thought I knew myself really well, but I wasn't talking to anybody else about it. And
hmm,
so I would say I didn't know what I didn't know because I didn't really understand how my presence or my interaction with other people, how it landed with other people.
hmm,
And so I went in seasons where people would tell me things about myself and I'd be like, I totally didn't understand it. Totally didn't
yeah,
is like, what? Like you're telling me like I was in college. I was pretty insecure and I had someone come up and tell me they were really intimidated by me and they thought I was really arrogant. And I was like, wow, I feel so insecure, like I don't fit in.
yeah,
Like I'm always trying to like, and here's somebody else is experiencing me the total like opposite. You
yeah.
ever had that kind of experience where there's that dissonant how you see yourself and how other people see you?
For sure. Yeah. I think the interesting relationship between self-awareness and even confidence, it's not there again, it's not linear, right? So many times what's perceived or yeah, the way we feel self-aware can be very it can change quickly when someone else brings something to you that's like, hey, did you know this about yourself? Or I've noticed this about you. And you're like, wow, who are they talking about? That is not me, right? They've got the wrong
Yeah,
person or something.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's where that benefit of having others around you is so key, is like we can see a certain amount ourselves, but we can also self-deceive really easily and not see the bigger picture.
yeah. I've got several different stories through my life of where I've had some key experiences with people who revealed or helped me see myself differently, or
Mm,
helped me see myself more accurately. And what I've come to believe and come to realize is that no matter how hard I try, to go away on retreats and do silent retreats and reflect and do journaling and do a lot of kind of spiritual formation things, there is a limit to how much self-awareness I can really gain just in those moments, in those things. Like I absolutely need people around me to add color commentary. And I would say over the last probably 10 years, I've really had a lot of that and it's been really good. And prior to that, I would say I didn't really invite people that close.
yeah.
And so I had a limited amount of insight. But I can say for me, like it definitely I only get like one piece of the picture when I'm just doing it in kind of on a solo mission.
Mhm,
I think there's value there. I'm not saying there's not
mhm,
value there. I'm saying it's
mhm.
incomplete.
Yeah. Yeah, I would double down on that for sure. I think there's a certain amount of work that investment you can do on your own and expose certain things. But again, you're only aware of what you're aware of, right? You can only see what you can see. Experience, I think, is a great indicator and like I said, can shine light on things. I think it's like I almost view it in my mind as like a cheat code. It's like, yeah, with enough self-reflection and time, you will probably, you could end up in the same destination if we want to call it that or further on that journey. But man, you can really speed it up when you have those close to you that can speak truth to you. And some of us have that and I think some of us don't. That's a whole nother topic. But when we have those that we do trust that they have our best interest at heart and we can hear what they have to say in way of feedback to us. And I know not the reason for this connection, but the work that I've done with you and even your process by which you can actually put that into a type of framework and say, this is actually a process you can follow to help make that happen quicker. It's huge. To do that on your own is only one element. You can definitely catapult that by including others.
Yeah, we'll talk about the how in just a minute, but I want to stay with why for a second. For me, and I'm interested to hear how you would respond to that. But for me, my experience was when I didn't have other people, both I wasn't intentional about my own kind of time and taking that self-awareness, which is really slowing down.
Hmm.
And in a sense, slowing down, reflecting, taking a pause from the constant, you know, activity, distraction, going from work to entertainment, going, from commitments to commitments. But when you actually disconnect and do spend some time in reflection, that's important. Then you also get some insight from other people. What I found is that um, when I was in seasons where I wasn't very self-aware, I actually wasn't very, I would say, effective in many areas of my life. You know, at work, I was kind of okay. Relationally, I was kind of okay. Engaging with my family, I was kind of okay. But the more I actually had that balance of self-awareness and ability to really hear from people a little bit more about how they experienced me, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, I mean, through that work, I feel like I was much more effective in the roles that I took. I was more intentional with the things I committed to. And so I think that in itself is this kind of real value of why do we need to pursue self-awareness?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that jumps out to me is, and I would speak to my past similarly, is that I would easily self sabotage without even realizing it was happening, right? Is like when I didn't have the self awareness, I would maybe take on things that I'm not the best suited to take on. But again, it's a lack of understanding myself to the point that, like, yeah, you know what? I'm not the best person to be doing this thing. And that could be very superficial, just task oriented in a given day professionally. That could also be, bigger things, right? Investment things, or where you're, using time and energy even outside of your profession. It's like, know thyself has a lot of layers to it. Back to that onion. And I think,
Yeah,
yeah, I noticed I would commit to things that I wasn't the best one to do, because I didn't have that exposure yet to myself,
yeah,
or even knowing what pieces of things to own, right? If it's a large project professionally or something, like, great, I can be really effective up here. Please don't involve me in this back here. And if you need me, get me in short bursts and for ideas, not for execution, or whatever the case might be. I feel like, yes, the biggest thing I would say is, like, I found myself self-sabotaging a lot in good nature and for good reasons
yeah,
initially, but just not knowing where those weak spots and blind spots are.
yeah. I'm laughing because I remember back to a job I took when I was about 26 years old, and I took a job primarily because someone invited me into it with the best of intentions. I think, like, really appreciated me, wanted me to be in this role. And I tried to do that role for like 5 years. Talk about self sabotage, putting yourself into a role that really does not fit you in any skill, in any aptitude, and anything, but it was aspirational. I wanted to do the job. I wanted to be a benefit to the people who invited me into the role. And so I tried my best to be this person, and it literally, like, almost killed me. Like, it just was such a bad fit. Sabotaging yourself for that period of time. And the reality is I just didn't have any external feedback, any insight as to why I was going down this spiral.
Yeah.
So totally relate to what you're saying about the self-sabotage thing of like for that period of time just
Yeah.
emptied me. I needed
Yep.
to recover from that significantly.
Yeah, I think it sort of relates. I think it's Patrick Lencioni that talks about your working zones of genius. And actually, the most dangerous ones aren't the ones you can recognize you're not good at. It's the ones that are in the middle where it's like they don't jump out at you as like, I'm not good at this. And so you just keep trying harder. And I'm just going to, man, I just got to figure it out. And to your point, if we're not careful, we are just, that's what'll kill us, right? Because it's not blatant enough to flag early. And so we think, oh, this is just an area of growth or development that I need or should have, or, fill in the blank. And so we continue to try at it. And next thing you know, yeah, it's like, what am I doing?
I see that pattern over and over again of trying to be this ideal that we create in our head. I really admire this person over here, so I'm going to try to be
Yeah.
like them. And so I'm going to fit myself into this mold. I'm going to perform in this role because it's what I think I should be like, or it's because I want to be like that. But it isn't necessarily, come from a real self-awareness. So why we need it, I think, just to summarize that, would be because we're not very self-aware. And when we are self-aware, probably are going to be more effective at showing up and investing ourselves in high return on investment type of activities, and not where we're mediocre or
Yeah. And
we're
I think,
spreading ourselves too thin.
yeah. And then like the flourishing aspect, I think when you have that self-awareness and you show up in the right ways, you feel that in other areas of your life. You feel like things aren't as hard, I guess is the best way to describe it. Or you feel like, oh no, this is what I'm designed to do right here. This is easy. A lot of times it feels easy. Someone else looking on could be like, I could never do that. That's so hard. But you find someone in their lane or their area of genius through self-awareness, things become a little easier and you see typically larger impact. You see more results in those areas too.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk about that as a sweet spot, like that intersection between the competencies we have, the motivations and joy we have, and the value we create in the world. So let's pivot to how do we get self awareness. So I can tell stories about the gradual process of me becoming more self aware um, over the past, I would say, 15 years or so. What's been most helpful to you in gaining self awareness?
Yeah, I think I'd speak to it in a few different ways. Number one is the things that I did on my own, like you said, like journaling or self reflection or silence or realizing that, yeah, I've got some tendencies. I'm speaking for myself to just kind of chase the next dopamine hit, and a lot of that was identity based and it was performance based. That's just the wiring that I have, and so first is like this realization that okay, I can recognize some things here that need a change, and then doing, people talk about doing the hard work. I don't know the best way to describe it, but it's not comfortable work. I will say that, right? And so there's an element of that. Then I'll say there's this other element of like what we spoke to earlier about life experiences, and you're kind of just handed certain opportunities to grow your awareness. And then I think there's this proactive seeking of self-awareness, and I think that includes other people. So there's like the self, there's the life just hands it to you, and then there's like, no, I need to go seek this out. I need to go find this. And for me, that was brought on by a particular season. So I had started my career early. It was in a corporate role, right? On a team, having a ton of fun, doing a lot of great work. It was all fun. Then transitioned, changed from like a product that I was associated with to more like intangible or results based. Love that. I think I flourished really well in that environment and did some really great things there. Then I decided like I wanted to do something solo, and so started a venture with two other partners. I say solo, small venture with two other partners. And that was a season for me that really exposed some things. I'd always been on a team, always surrounded by people, really got a lot of energy from other people. And that was a season that made me realize solo, you're exposed to a whole nother set of things. You're like, wow, okay, I show up different ways when I don't have a team around me or when I don't have others to do this thing with. That was one of the realizations for me. I'm motivated by people in a big way. Even kind of in a partnership of running coherently with, it just wasn't quite the same as like being on a team, moving in a direction with somebody. I think actually what it exposed in me before it was like awareness, and this is probably a maturity thing on my part, was like confidence. I was like, man, what is happening? Like I'm questioning so much more than I ever have, right? It was always like the next thing in front of me, confidently moving into the next thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, am I getting less confident the older I get? Am I becoming more self-aware? Do those two things connect? Or what's going on? And I think that was a season for me that really exposed an opportunity for me to grow. Hey, this is something I did not know about myself. And so that's more the experience side of it. Another thing that's been really good for me, and I'll even speak to the last 12 months, has been other, particularly men that are around me that are speaking into my life. That I feel like I've had different versions of in different seasons of my life, but I didn't even know I didn't even know what I was missing or how much of an impact that would have until I've experienced it. And it's
Mm.
kind of hard to put into words, but I do think that really whoever you call your group, could be a family member, it could be a friend group, it could be a hot, a group that's kind of developed off a similar interest or hobby. Whatever that place is, people that know you and know have seen you show up in different ways and can speak into that.
Yeah.
I think that's been life changing.
Yeah. Agreed. I think what's fascinating just to on that is, I think for a lot of my life, I thought that that was about information, like being around other people. It's like being a part of a small group or being a part of a developmental group. I remember when I was younger, I thought that was about getting information I didn't have. And so it's about like, oh, I need to ingest this information, and then magically, because I ingest this information, that'll be great. And what I found is that the most helpful, and I wonder if this is what you're talking about, is what's most helpful is to be around people that really know you. Is that it's not information about other things. It's that they kind of reflect back to you some things that you have trouble believing about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Or putting into
they say
words. Yeah.
like you are so much more competent, and you're so much more your gifting is so much greater than you actually think it is. And when
Mm-hmm.
other people are around you, you'll start to believe it because they'll reflect that back to you and go like, oh, I guess, wow. And it becomes this really encouragement to like, no, 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 focus here, Trey, focus here. You're really good at this. Focus here. Believe this about yourself. I wonder, is that the experience you had when you like as part of that group?
For me, I think early on, and I don't know if this fits into the like why it's important or how we've grown, how we've seen it show up, but I do think there was an element of self awareness that I thought was tied to more of a personality test or some kind of surface level reflection. I mean, again, to your point, not that self reflection is not helpful. It is massively helpful, but knowing what can't be picked up in a personality test is someone, to your point, reflecting back, hey, I see you show up in this way, or man, you really are good in this spot. And you may not even
Yeah.
recognize it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Or, knowing how you're wired, knowing your strengths, knowing your blind spots, but also I think knowing how you affect other people. That's something that is so hard to see on your own, right? Because as we're speaking, we're thinking, this is my intent. This is what I would like to happen. I hope this is what I'm getting through on. The reality is none of that could be true because we're not the one receiving it. We're the one giving it. And
That's
so
right.
having someone who is on the receiving end be able to relay back to you, this is how you really help me, or this is how you show up, or when you said this thing, this is what I thought about, or this is what really unlocked something for me. So to your point about community and even the value of community, you're right. It's not a knowledge transfer. Others get to perceive you and relay that back to you. And you get to see parts about yourself that you cannot see on your own.
Yeah, and there's so much I could say about this, but there's like you talk about personality inventories, which I've taken. I'm sure a lot of people take. I've taken a ton, and I would say the thing that makes me doubt some of that isn't necessarily the tool itself. I think the tools themselves are fine. It's the fact that when I bring my brain and my emotions and my identity to those things, they can be wildly off depending on how I feel that day.
Yeah.
So if I am not like very self-aware and I'm taking it, or if I'm taking it aspirationally, or I'm taking it when I'm really lack confidence because I'm just having that day where I'm lacking confidence, all of a sudden that tool then lies to me. It tells me things that aren't true. And I think what I love about what you said about having people around you that reflect back to you is I feel like people who experience me can reflect back to me if they care about me. They'll reflect back to me truth that I can't see on my own, that a test, that a survey or a personality assessment can't tell me. But it does take trust. It does take
Hmm.
this sense of like I've got to go ask. And one of the things that is not very helpful, at least in the career world, is that usually the feedback that comes to us isn't something we've gone and asked for. And the source that we get that feedback from are more positional, kind of formal authority, not necessarily people that we've asked. And so what I've found is I personally have been shaped massively by the feedback I've gotten from people that when I've gone and asked them things, it's been much more meaningful for me than any formal feedback, the
Yeah.
kind of experience I've had in my 33 years in corporate America.
Yeah.
So I mean, I really think that's a big piece is the willingness to go and be in relationship with people enough that you're open to asking for that
Yeah.
information.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing following your lead. I did that both reaching way back in my past and people more currently. And it's also really cool to see the through line on some of that, right? From someone who knew you in your teenage years or in college, miraculously brings up the same things that someone you worked with last year saw. And they're different versions, maybe, but it's definitely, you can see the through line so easily. And you go, all right, this is another kind of confirmation of self awareness that, yeah, this is just who I am. This is how I'm uniquely gifted, built, positioned, whatever word you want to stick in there. Like, this is who I am. This is my identity. This is my fingerprint on the world versus someone else. And it's so evident. But even now, I think about a lot of the, people that I do life with that do speak in and give me tons of self-awareness. I've only known them for the last 5 years, right? Versus when you can reach even further back, it's shocking how similar some of that
Yeah.
feedback is.
So what you're talking about is we do a leadership accelerator, and then I do leadership profiles, for executive clients. But the leadership accelerator, where you go back and interview people, and I always get this pushback from people. They say, like, that I worked with that person when I was in high school. They won't remember me. I'm now in my 30s or 40s, and I say, like, wait a minute, they will. They'll recognize things about you that you can't imagine. And I love the experience you had of going back and talking to, someone from your teens and not having talked to them in years. And
Right.
you're like, oh my goodness, the through line of who you are, who your identity, who you're created to be has not changed. You've gotten better and better and better and more aware and better at being who you are. But the signs of who you were, the who you were, he saw.
Are you hitting an invisible ceiling in your career? For many leaders, their next move isn't about working harder, it's about seeing what's currently hidden. Your standard annual reviews aren't giving you the full picture. The Leadership Accelerator changes that. Through our Leadership Foundation framework, which includes intensive 360-degree feedback, we help you identify the exact blind spots sabotaging your effectiveness. Stop guessing and start leading with clarity. Our next in-person Leadership Accelerator is coming to Middle Tennessee soon. Apply at viveraleadership.com today. Now, back to the podcast.
Back then. And that happens in every accelerator. Every time someone goes through it, they'll doubt that. And then they'll go back and talk to someone and be like blown away at how clearly someone saw them. And they just were totally unaware of it. Personally, they were unaware of that until they went to ask.
Yeah. It was such a unique experience for me. It's so impactful, like super vulnerable, but also so impactful in that process.
It's hard. Like talk about vulnerable. Like why? I think it is. I agree with you. I did it. It's vulnerable. But talk about, why do you think it's so hard for us to go and open ourselves up to feedback? What was your experience with that? And as you've talked to other people, why do you think we have such a difficult time exposing ourselves by asking for that?
That's a great question. And I'm sure it's different for everybody. For me, I'll throw out a personal, one of these personality tests. I would test as like a 3 on the Enneagram. And so for reference, for those that either don't know that or aren't familiar, for me, perception, how people view me, how I show up, I subconsciously, I can say that truthfully, subconsciously run a lot of that without ever, it never hits cognitive. It's not like, oh, I need to make sure that I look this way or sound this way or show up this way. It just is somewhere deep down in here. It's important. And so for me, I think that has a huge bearing. And I think for everybody that's going to be different. But for me, that plays a huge bearing on self-awareness. Is I subconsciously make decisions to try to show up certain ways, but I don't get to see that until someone else speaks it back to me or witnesses or experiences it and can give me feedback. And so I think for me, it was so vulnerable because it was scary. It was like, there was an element of like, I know who I want to be and who I strive to be, but who am I, to these other people, and to those who know me best, who am I and how do I show up? And then is that going to line up? Is that going to be a perfect match to like, yep, that's who I strive to be. And that's great to hear that that's who I am. Or is there, which in my case, there's plenty of situations where it's like, yeah, that's not who I strive to be. That's not how I thought I showed up, and that was really exposed to me as early as this year when I did that with my own family. We did an emotional audit essentially. And it was like, hey, how does dad show up in the house? And I asked my wife, I asked both of my daughters. And so from a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and then my wife, you got vastly different things. But like on your level, just how does dad show up? And those was a series of questions. I think it was 8 to 10 questions. And oh my gosh, it was like, very exposing as to
Yeah.
how I show up in a private space with the best of intentions, but carrying work stress in or whatever it might be. Man, it was pretty exposing. Like, wow, yeah, dad shows up on edge a lot.
Yeah.
Dad shows up angry a lot. And it's like, man, I'm not an angry person. I have a really long fuse before, I get to the end of my rope. And yet, things like that can just expose you so quick. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's good.
It is interesting how we love to live in blissful ignorance in terms of how people we like to just live under the illusion that everyone experiences us the way that we want them to experience us, and they always think like, oh yeah, you're doing exactly what you should be doing, and you look you're playing the role exactly like you should be playing. And when we open ourselves up to go, how do you really experience me, that we're so scared there's going to be a major difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of avoid that as much as possible because we're just scared of the hurt, the disappointment, the disconnect. For me, I know you're a 3. I have to say this. A lot of executives I work with are 3s. Like there's a performer kind of thing that's really good. I'm a 1. And so for me, the internal monologue for me is about, am I doing it right? And so I'm always scared, like someone's going to tell me I'm doing it wrong. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like how I perform. It's really about this perfectionism.
It's right, wrong.
Yeah. It's right. It's a fascinating kind of way we come at that. So I think the invitation there is the how, in terms of how you get self-awareness, has to be this balance of really doing some work. Counseling is good, and doing some reflection, doing those things, like really taking an audit pause. But the essential nature of actually having the guts to go and expose yourself to the insight of people who care about you, that's an essential piece of self-awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and go to those that are closest to you. I mean, there's all of us have an easy place to start. Someone, that that you consider close. Start anywhere, right? Out of the mouth of babes. I learned a lot from my 10-year-old about myself in that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
there.
I always say, like, it's much easier to trust that from people who care about you.
Yeah, have no other vested interest. That's another thing, is like these can be, again, as we spoke about a minute ago, reaching back to someone you worked with in your teens. There's no angle here. It's just raw feedback, right? It's not, you don't have to worry about, subliminal angles or motivations that they may have.
Yeah. I have to say, a plug or kind of a challenge to leaders. When you're leading in an organization, if you have positional authority, the more and more and more positional authority you have, actually the less exposure you have to honest feedback. The less people are really going to naturally tell you how your leadership lands, because they're dependent on you. And so if you're the boss, the likelihood is there's a lot of people who think a lot of things about you, about your leadership, and you have no idea. And they're not going to tell you, either on the good side or the side where you have this self-sabotage. They're not going to tell you either one. If you don't invite it, and even if sometimes you do invite it, they're going to be very guarded and cagey. And then when you get feedback from someone that you don't trust, that's in competition with you, you then discount it. So there is this kind of real challenge for leaders to say, you're flying pretty blind in terms of how your leadership lands.
Yeah.
Just by virtue of the positional authority you have.
Yeah. And I think that to your point, it only gets worse, if you can say that, with the responsibility or I would even put success in there as well, right? It's like the more influence you have, the harder it gets to receive honest feedback.
Yeah. And that is really the invitation, is to say, you got into leadership. Leaders, I hope you hear this. You got into leadership because you're really good, because you have this skill set that allows you to drive and influence and do stuff. As you do that, you gotta think about the fact that you're now more isolated, and you have to be much more intentional in inviting people in, and I promise you, make you even more effective at leading. It'll be massively, exponentially more effective the more you do that. So let's now spin back to the idea, the third topic, which is the value. Like what have you gained? What have I gained from self-awareness? I think there's value in terms of how you navigate your current leadership role. There's value in terms of how you navigate career decisions, in terms of stepping to the next role. And then there's value just at being a human, playing the roles we play in our personal life. So for you, and I'd be glad to share mine, but what difference has it made as you've gained more self-awareness? I mean, you went through the accelerator a couple years ago. I know you've done this, this group over the past 2 years, I believe, that's been a high challenge group. So you've done certain things. What's been the value for you? How have you seen it affect how you've navigated your current role, your career decisions as you made transitions, or just the roles you played in your family or in your personal life?
Yeah. Not to be overly dramatic, but I wouldn't be in the role that I'm in without the work that I don't think I would be exactly where I'm at without the work that you and I did through the accelerator. It was a key in making the decision to join the team that I'm on right now, join the company at the role that I'm in right now. And so, not to be overly dramatic, but it had a huge impact on that, right? When I went through that accelerator, I did not have this role, and I still had 2 other businesses that I was doing in some version of solo. And it was a huge awareness piece to, I'm going to perform better when I'm on a team. And that's what that looked like for me. So very directly, it's affected me in this role here. How I've continued to leverage that both professionally and in other areas. I would say with leadership with my team, I use it often. I have to remind myself, again, when I tend to put my name on everything, I have to remind myself, hold on a second, like before I go headlong into that, right? What about this could I delegate to someone who has skill set in this area more than me based on what I know about myself? Part of that has been, case in point, at the beginning of this conversation, I have an executive assistant, and how her and I work together, Kirsten and I work together, has dramatically been impacted by the work that I've done with you and trying to be more self-aware. And I also feel like I'll wait till however long we are into this, an hour into this to tell you this, but I am not the person that's got this figured out by any means. I feel like I'm just barely on the journey of this self-awareness and leveraging it. But I think for me, where it's made a difference is how I show up, the things I invest in, where I attach my identity, I think is another piece of that. And then I would say the results that I create. I create the best results when I am in the areas that I'm best to be in and clearly recognize where I'm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd have to agree. I spent a lot of my life really being broad, like trying to be good at a lot of different things. And I would say as I went and interviewed people and got a lot of insight about how people experience my leadership from back in my 20s all the way through, I realized that where I was really effective was in this narrow band. All the stuff out here, people kind of like tolerated, but when I was in this narrow band, I was super exponentially effective. And so I began to go like, oh, if I then try to organize my life where I'm focused on those things and try to realize like there's going to be some stuff outside of that I need to develop and I need to try to work on, but there's going to be stuff outside of that I really need to delegate to people who are much better at it than me. They're much more skilled in those areas than me. And so I would say, I'll use the word fruitful, but the value of the value of the return investment for every minute I spend working was much higher in that band than it was outside of that.
Yeah.
But I didn't believe it. I did not
Yeah.
believe it before that. And so,
Yeah, there's an acceptance that has to go with self-awareness too. There's like the awareness, and then there's the acceptance of that awareness that is almost like another step to it, which is, okay, I've heard this enough that I've got to make a decision about this. Do I believe that? Is that just what people are telling me? And then you kind of have to reckon with that.
yeah. Yeah. And I always say like confidence doesn't come from just trying to will yourself to be confident. It comes from real clarity and going like, okay, yes, this is true. I'm going to embrace this. And then as I practice that, I realized like, oh yeah, that's true. I can
You
see
can
that.
see it self-fulfilling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's also another element of this too, where I feel like where I've seen the results is when I feel like things become easier. Again, you're creating the impact you set out to create or you want to create, and the path seems easier. If I'm hitting a lot of headwinds or there's a ton of friction, certainly there's areas where we want that, right? If it's a self-development thing of like, I just want to get better at this thing. And if that's calligraphy with my left hand, that's going to take a long time, right? I'm right hand dominant. I don't know calligraphy to begin with. That's going to take time. If that's a choice I make, okay, that's one thing. But if I'm going to go sign on for a role to be a left-hand calligraphist, this is not going to work great, long term. So I think there's this element of like, there's areas that we want to self-develop, and that's fine. But man, when I can see where I have less friction, I'm in flow more often, and the results are there, it's like, okay, these are all green lights,
Yeah.
it's like the consecutive green lights to point me in the right direction.
Yeah, I love the idea of as we get better and better at honing in on that sweet spot and really trying to understand ourselves better. We continually do that, continually seek that feedback, pay attention to friction, pay attention to the feedback, to self-sabotage, those kind of things. Then yeah, it does get to where the joy of working is actually not a surprise. You're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
this is who I'm created to be. I know for me, like I definitely I focused in my current role on certain things and delegated other things. And then as I've started or gotten into new endeavors, I've realized I need to really intentionally find people who can complement, and I've got to look for that. And sometimes I got to pay for that. And so like I've got to actually outsource this. So whether like I've hired coaches, I've hired people that have been able to do a certain part of my of help me develop a business, because I know if I do it myself, it's going to take me 5 times as much energy. It's not going to be as good. And
Yeah.
so there's a sense of the intentionality that it's given me has been allowed me to be much more, I would say, accelerate progress.
Yeah, that is something for me where it all connected. In realizing that when you know yourself better, you're more self aware and you surround yourself, you fill in those gaps to your point. My goodness, it really changes a lot of things. It changes a lot of things personally for you, but it also changes the results and the outcomes, and it changes other people. And that's what I have to remind myself of is like, by knowing myself better, it should also serve other people. If by knowing myself better, it's strictly selfish and it's all a me thing, that loses momentum for me in a lot of ways. It has to also positively affect others. And that's where I see, less micromanagement. I don't feel like I need to insert myself on everything. It's how understanding I'm not the best person for every task. So the better I know myself, the more I can offer opportunity to others, see them flourish in their God-given abilities. And together, it's like the high tide that rises all ships. It's like I think the more self-aware we can each be, we all see the benefits of that. It impacts those around us equally, if not more, potentially than even ourselves, I think, in a lot of ways.
Couldn't agree more. There's a part of my experience over the last couple of years of thinking life was going to look a certain way, thinking that the Vera leadership was going to look a certain way, and realizing what I need to let go of, and what I need to stop trying to control stuff, because I realized, like, even in my relationship with my wife Julie, with our partnership in work, and realizing the amazing skill set she has for relational capacity, writing, strategy. Oh my goodness, to see her doing these amazing things. I've learned so much about her and learned from her, but partly because I realized like I had to let it go. And so exactly what you said, the value of like letting go and being able to recognize, oh my goodness, like there is a huge value to other people
Hmm.
as we get more self-aware.
Yeah,
That's
I
good.
think that's where that self-awareness anchored in a calling or whatever word you want to use there, that's where it becomes transformational, is when it's not solely selfish.
Great. Thank you so much. So we've been through why we need to be self-aware, why we don't have it, a little bit of how to get it, the value of getting it. Just to highlight it is you got to continue to go back to the well, and it's not just a one time thing. There's a sense of it. It becomes how you live, becomes how you engage on a regular basis with the people that you work with, the people that are around you, and willing to continue to hear that and invite that in.
Yeah. Yeah. That was, I think another aha moment for me was it's definitely not a destination. I don't find it a destination. It is truly a journey. And it's like, I hope that journey continues. naturally am a curious person, but it's like, how do you keep that curiosity around self-awareness,
Yeah.
till death? It's like, how do I do this every day?
Yeah. One of the things I find that's been a helpful image for me um, the old adage of like you're climbing the ladder of your career. And I actually don't remember where I got this. So if someone's listening to this and they're like, I'm the one that said this, or I wrote the book on that, let me know. But but it really is this idea that life is much more of a path. Like they talk about journey, but I like to think about like I spent a lot of time doing wilderness education, and shout out to Paul Harbison who might be listening to this. He took me out and it taught me how to do stuff in the wilderness, and one of the things I realized is in the wilderness is this path is a much more effective way of thinking about our life because we're not in competition with other people. We're actually collaborating with other people on the journey. And sometimes you're walking with people, sometimes they're walking, towards you. Sometimes you're doing hard things together, sometimes you're solo. And it's a much better way of thinking about how we invite people to give us insight. Is that it's not we're not in the paradigm of competition with each other actually makes it harder for us to get self-awareness. Just like you said, like it's a journey. It's
Yep.
a journey. It's not a destination.
And it's not performance based either. There's not levels to it. You can't do something to reach a new level or fast track it necessarily. It's progress, remaining open. I mean, I do think, and it'd be interesting. I'd love to hear your perspective on like what are kind of ongoing things that you do to try to keep that journey going. I'm all ears on that because I'm
Yeah.
sure you do a better job than I do. But like, yeah, are there habits that you have that continue to contribute to self awareness? Maybe it's not something like, interviewing someone from your past or something quite that dramatic, but like, are there daily rhythms that you seek to help you keep this top of mind?
Yeah, we try to put this really cool name to it called the feedback code. But yeah, there's a sense of like there's an intentionality. What I call is to pause. And it's not after absolutely everything, but after something that's a significant kind of thing, to pause and then intentionally ask some questions and then take some time to reflect and allow that to then refine that understanding. And so
Mm,
whether it's in work or it's in relationship with my kids or my wife or whatever, I do think that's something that we can do, but I do think it's hard. And that's probably why I put a name to it called the feedback code is because we do try to teach like, hey, this isn't a one-time thing. And the more and more you can implement this pause, this invitation, the more natural it becomes over time.
yeah.
And so that's for another podcast talk. We can talk about kind of how to do that. But it definitely is something that has to be a regular discipline, or else you'll see yourself, you know, drifting over 5 years and then coming back and going, oh, man, I missed out on being more effective.
Yeah.
And so it is something that we have to do. And wherever you are, it's hard. It takes
Hmm.
intentionality.
Yeah.
And again, it takes intentionality for those of us who are in leadership. We usually have our head down and we're working. If we're
Yep.
not
So
intentional
performance
about it, it doesn't
driven
happen.
for those of us wired where performances and outcomes are really, really important. I think it does lend itself to be a harder process to learn and adopt and keep in the forefront, you
Yeah.
know? That's interesting. I'll have to monitor that because, like you said, maybe it's not after everything, but what are those maybe more
Yeah.
stressful or pressure or complicated things that afterwards
Well,
demand
maybe
a demand?
we could have another podcast. We could talk about that because I do think it's really important. And I have to say, I'm not making fun of Enneagram threes because I work with a lot of Enneagram threes, and I realize like we are all like everybody is kind of in a unique position. But it is fascinating to me how the self sabotage that we create in our lives based on what our experience is. It's so subconscious.
Yes.
It's totally not on the forefront of our brain, and if we walk around with life thinking that people are self-aware, you actually become really judgmental. But when you
Mm,
start thinking about walk around and interact with people thinking they're not as self-aware as you think they are, your compassion for people just grows.
yeah.
Your
That's
compassion
such
and
a great point.
curiosity grows.
Yeah. Empathy, compassion. That's such a great point. Yeah. I think there's this assumption that I tend to carry for sure is that like people know how they show up and they know how they're affecting others. And like, there's like, oh, surely they know this. And on the simplest of things, I think many times they don't.
Well, it's
I don't.
fascinating to me because you go, I think people are much harder on themselves internally. They really don't see some obvious things that you would think that they see. And
Yeah.
so I'm always fascinated by like how people crave and really need, even people who lead at a high level. When you show up with some type of specifically, let me tell you, the way that you just did that was really impressive. They'll go, oh, man, it shocked them that they've actually gotten that type of positive affirmation. But then this the other
Yeah.
side is like people don't see how they show up.
Hmm.
Um, with compassion, if you engage in a relationship, you can add so much value to the people around you.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of rereading Radical Candor. She shares a story in there about something like that, where even you go to give feedback and it's like, I think I can tell this is not, it's not quite landing. Like they're just not quite seeing the picture. And so with the best intentions and truly wanting the best for them, there's times when you have to be more specific and give more direct feedback. And it's like, yeah, people, me included, don't walk around in life keeping self-awareness at the top of my mind. That is for sure.
Yeah. I love the radical candor. It's a whole separate conversation we can come back and talk about in the next podcast. I would love to have you back. Always enjoy spending time with you. Glad we get to rub shoulders and walk through life together. But thank you so much for sharing your
Yes.
experience and your wisdom. So grateful for your generosity in doing that. So thanks, Trey.
The work that you do is so important. It impacts probably far more than you see. And I just want to tell you that you guys are doing deep, meaningful, very impactful work. And so, yeah, keep it up. I've been impacted.
Well,
I know many others have.
thanks, Trey. Julie and I appreciate you and appreciate your kind words. So thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us today. At Vivero Leadership, we aren't afraid to admit that transformational growth requires friction, but it shouldn't require guesswork. The Leadership Accelerator is your chance to get in the room with other high-achieving leaders in Middle Tennessee and do the real work. You'll walk away with true clarity. Your real leadership ID is born from 360-degree feedback that actually lands true. Tactical shifts. You'll learn practical changes you can implement the very next Monday. The Leadership Accelerator empowers you with a clear path to your next leadership steps or organizational breakthrough. Don't let your blind spots define your career trajectory. Space is limited for our next cohort. Visit viveroleadership.com right now to learn more and submit your application. Remember, there are no carbon copies. Own your leadership. We'll see you in the room.